In 1881, Cora Mitchell Downs, teacher, poet, and journalist, became the first woman to sit on the KU Board of Regents and very likely was the first woman in the nation to hold such a position. She was also one of the rare 0.04% of Americans to get a divorce in the 1880s. Her divorce in 1885 was rare enough to take almost a fourth of a page in the Kansas City Times on July 10th of that year. Whispers of alienation and severance in one of the oldest and best families of Wyandotte have been heard for many months in the highest social circles of that town, reported the paper. Upholding gender norms of the time, the paper was also quick to assure readers that Cora had, quote, remained a good and obedient wife, and that divorce was an absolute last resort. Her husband, Arthur Downs, was accused of neglect, desertion, mismanaging Cora's real estate holdings, and there were rumors of adultery. As seen in Cora's story, 19th century opinions on divorce in Kansas City ranged from a mix of extreme concern to gossipy glee. Divorce was generally a public affair, with the most scandalous divorce cases often being given splashy headlines like this one from 1838. One 1867 satirical article from the Kansas City Daily Journal of Commerce claimed that an entertaining feature of the increasing divorce rate was that the public had the opportunity of knowing all the particulars of the connubial relation, which is a most delightful amusement. While many Kansas Cityans enjoyed the salacious details, others did not. The Baptist newspaper Word and Way, published in Kansas City, bemoaned newspapers that filled the minds of young people with interesting and graphic descriptions of murders, suicides, divorce court scandals, and all manner of abominations. Despite the extremely low rate of divorce, just 0.3 divorces per 1,000 Americans, the increasing availability of divorce signaled an end of traditional marriage to many. It may have seemed dire. Between 1867 and 1879, the percentage of divorces in America increased 70%, from 10,000 divorces annually to 17,000. Divorces in Missouri were also easier to obtain than in many other states. Divorce wasn't legal at all in South Carolina, for example, until 1949. The Missouri Senate approved an act concerning divorce and alimony in 1845 that allowed divorce on the grounds of impotency, one party having another living husband or wife, adultery, absenteeism for 2 years, being convicted of felony or, quote, infamous crime, drunkenness, cruel or barbarous treatment, a husband becoming a vagrant, or indignities to the other as shall render his or her condition intolerable. Those who could not obtain a divorce in Missouri had other options as well. Leavenworth, Kansas was referred to as a divorce metropolis in 1869, and divorces were similarly easy to obtain in nearby Indiana and Illinois. In the earliest years of Missouri statehood, divorces seemed rare enough to rarely register widespread concern, although those obtaining a divorce certainly would have faced intense stigma. Divorce notices were published in newspapers largely without comment, like in this divorce notice from the November 9, 1866 edition of the Kansas City Journal of Commerce. The 1870s, however, seemed to bring about a wave of concern about divorce in the Kansas City region and more largely in Missouri. Governor Benjamin Gratz Brown addressed the Missouri legislature during a special address in 1871 recommending that divorce laws become more stringent. In 1877, a bill was introduced to the Missouri Senate that divorce be prevented on trivial grounds. That same year, the Missouri House Committee on Criminal Justice recommended a bill to prevent the publication in newspapers of depositions of evidence in suits of divorce, probably much to the displeasure of many people who enjoyed reading the gossip section of their local newspaper. Surrounding states also began to tighten their divorce laws. Indiana, which had long been an easy place to obtain a discreet divorce for Kansas Cityans, modified its divorce code in 1871 to require 3 years of residency before being able to apply for a divorce. The increasing difficulties of obtaining a divorce and a lack of support for people in abusive marriages could and did result in tragedy. In a case in the early 20th century, Hazel Kirschbaum was denied a divorce despite telling a judge that her husband hit her and threatened her with a revolver. The divorce was denied because her husband reported that Helen got drunk at a party and that he supported her financially. In another case, a woman in Holt County, Missouri was shot and killed by her husband after applying for a divorce in 1877. This was not solely a women's issue. Jean P. Territory alleged in 1899 that his wife was mentally ill and tried to poison him and kill him. He told the courts that he feared for his life. The judge denied him a divorce on the grounds that she was not mentally ill when they were married. A marriage could be annulled if a person was judged to be of unsound mind when they were married, but not if they became so during their marriage. The increasing hysteria surrounding the ever-increasing divorce rate came to a head in Kansas City in the early 20th century when the citywide divorce rate reached 1 divorce to every 3.5 marriages. In 1911, Kansas City hired a divorce proctor, W. W. Wright, in an attempt to curb the number of divorces in the city. As divorce proctor, Wright could investigate divorce claims for truthfulness, question the divorcing parties in front of a judge during their cases, and counsel couples who wished to file for divorce. In his first year, he reduced the number of divorces by 40%. Frequently, he counseled couples to do the opposite of what we might now consider sound advice to unhappy couples, to buy a house and have children to bind them together. Wright served as divorce proctor until 1914 and continued to issue increasingly dire warnings about the state of divorce in Kansas City, even predicting most divorces would someday become illegal. He told the Ladies' Home Journal in 1912, "I am not a disbeliever in divorce, when divorce is needed. In some cases, it is a blessing and the only way out of a terrible marital mess. But the usual divorce is nothing more nor less than a crime. Someday, it will be regarded as such." Despite his dire warnings, divorce rates continued to rise throughout the 20th century, with the divorce rate topping out at 5.3 divorces per 1,000 Americans in 1979. No-fault divorces, in which couples are not required to prove wrongdoing by the other party, were first introduced in California in 1970 and were slowly adopted nationwide. Missouri was an early adopter of the concept, legalizing no-fault divorces in 1974 and eliminating onerous restrictions on divorce for unhappy couples in Kansas City and throughout Missouri. A huge change from the difficult and public divorces of the 19th century.